there are some various scenarios in life where you have certain levels of expectations for things. Like for example, if I were to go to a fast food burger joint, I'd likely experience a burger which tastes like manic depression, served to me by staff who look at me as if I had just shot their dog, and dined amongst other clientele who look like they just arrived from the Jeremy Kyle show. But I don't feel saddened by this experience. In fact, my burger didn't have a footprint in it this time, so I was pleasantly surprised. Now compare that to if I were to dine somewhere a little bit more upmarket, where the food is comprised of high quality ingredients, cooked by some of the most talented chefs in the country, served on a table that has more than one set of cutlery. Naturally, I'm going to be expecting much more. However, my steak was served medium instead of medium rare, and the waitress would refuse to go on a date with me despite me offering her a generous £3 tip. So although all in all the experience was certainly better than what I had in the burger joint, it sadly didn't meet up to the expectations I had set, and so I actually come away feeling disappointed. And that's kinda how I feel about Wendell and Wild, a film that seemed to have a lot of great talent behind it, such as the director of Coraline, and a dark story combining elements of horror, trauma, and mystery, all of which got me very hyped for when I started watching, yet after finishing my viewing, I couldn't help but feel a sense of underwhelming disappointment. So what exactly went wrong for something that had all the odds going for it? Well, let's dive in and take a look.
Drowning is so peaceful.
But first, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, Raid Shadow Legends, brought to you by the champion from Raid Shadow Legends, Professor Death Knight.
Professor Death Knight here from Teleria University, legally not a school, with a math problem. If you create a hit mobile game in 2019, how many champions will you have now? Over 700! Not only does Raid have hundreds of rad champions, it also has 15 amazing factions. Faction Pop Quiz. Can you name the latest faction? If you said the elusive Sylvan Watchers, you're right! Okay class, any questions?
Okay Professor, aside from Ultimate Death Knight, who is Death Knight's new favourite champion?
Alright, if I can't say Ultimate Death Knight, then I gotta say Ultimate Death Knight. He's my #1 boy. I'm not supposed to have favorites, but I do.
How very humbling. And which of the new champions has Death Knight become friends with?
Well, I'm friends with literally every champion. But my favorite new friend is for sure Pytheon. You ever been friends with a lizard man? Dude makes a killer quiche.
Thank you Professor Death Knight. Raid Call of the Arbiter is now in full swing, where Raid's adding some of the new characters from the series as champions you can play within the game. The first one is Artak, a mighty orc warlord, available to everyone for free. All you have to do is just log into Raid for 7 days between now and July 24th. And if you haven't started playing Raid yet, use my link in the description to get, or scan my QR code on screen, where you can get an epic champion Talia, amongst other useful things. Thank you to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Now back to the review. Wendell and Wild is a 2022 American stop-motion film which focuses around a young girl named Kat, whom with the help of some demons is on a mission to bring her parents back from the dead. But with the demons having their own ulterior motive, and an evil corporation set to destroy her hometown, things don't go quite as simply as planned. Now if you've been watching my channel, you know I love a bit of stop motion, and of course, a little bit of childhood trauma. So naturally, I was really keen to watch this film. But despite the premise, what really drew me in was the talent behind it. The film was written and produced by Jordan Peele, the guy who's also directed Get Out, Us, and Nope. 3 films that are renowned for their dark and off-putting tone. And though I haven't actually seen Us and Nope, I really did enjoy Get Out. The unsettling feeling that just grows throughout as we begin to unravel the strange occurrences going on around our main character. It's dark, twisted, and oddly comedic in places too. But what really got me the most hyped was the fact that this film was directed by the legendary Henry Selick, the guy who directed Nightmare Before Christmas, James and the Giant Peach, and of course, Coraline. Coraline was also a film that had a very dark and unsettling tone, where things would become weirder and more drastic as we begin unraveling the mystery of the strange going-ons. Interestingly enough, however, despite the crazy success of Coraline, Selick was actually set to retire before making Wendell and Wild. This is because after the success of Coraline, Selick was hired by Disney to create a film called The Shadow King, which you can actually see a snippet of on YouTube. But according to Selick, the studio was becoming far too interfering in the creative process, despite initially agreeing that any notes from the studio wouldn't be mandatory. One particular individual causing issue was Pixar's founder, John Lasseter, as quoted from Selick in an interview. "Lasseter really couldn't support my vision. He thought he could make it better. And so we kept changing and changing and changing. I was kind of down. I wasn't sure I was going to make another movie again." I mean, you have the guy who directed one of the greatest stop motion films ever made, and you're there telling him how to do his job? Fuck off, Lasseter. Or should I say, arse-eater. Let the man cook. Because of these changes, the film's budget began to get out of control, and so the project was eventually shut down by Disney. Fortunately, however, Selick was drawn to the comedy duo Keegan-Michael Kay and Jordan Peele, with their Comedy Central show, Key and Peele. Selick approached the two men with an original story he had made years ago called Wendell and Wild, a story which he based around his two sons, who, because were being disobedient at the time, he drew as demons. Key and Peele, also being fans of Selick, happily took up the offer, and so the collaboration began. And with such great talent of two horror comedy minds, plus the fact that this film would be given a more mature PG-13 rating to allow darker and more mature themes, this film was set to be an absolute banger. Right? Kinda. Alright, let me just start off by saying that this isn't by any means a bad film. It's just that I was kind of expecting more from it. The film has a lot of good qualities going for it, but then there are some really noticeable flaws too, mostly with the writing. But let's start with the good stuff first. Okay, so the animation, it's fantastic, and exactly what you'd expect from Selick. First thing you'll notice is that the film has an interesting art style, with characters having exaggerated features and some possessing an almost 2D-like design. The characters were designed by caricature artist Pablo Lobato, which when looking at his 2D artwork, I think the team did a pretty good job transferring it over to the 3D models, though they did have to admit that this was no easy feat. One other noticeable style is the fact that we can see the slots on our characters' faces, where the different mouthpieces attach. Now this is normally masked over with CG, but this was a conscious choice by Selick to leave in, as he wanted to remind audiences that these are in fact puppet characters that are being animated by real people. In fact, Selick even wanted to have this be the case for Coraline. Quote, "In Coraline, I wanted to leave the seam line in, because I saw everyone noticed it at first, but they weren't thinking about it after 5 minutes. I couldn't quite win over the people in power." I know that's something that's not going to appeal to everyone, but for me personally, I love it when you can see the workings behind a piece of animation. Like the fingerprint marks you would see on the older Aardman shorts, or even the difference in colours from layers in traditional cell animation. It's like when you see the inner workings of a machine, it just looks so captivating to witness all the moving parts. Or hell, even just seeing the circuit boards and the transparent game controllers we used to get. Why aren't these a thing anymore? Anyway, similar to Tim Burton's complaint in Corpse Bride, Selick felt that stop motion had now become so smooth that some people would mistake it for CG. So like Burton did for Frankenweenie, Selick purposely lowered the frame rate of some scenes to give it that jagged stop motion aesthetic. Of course, there is some limited use of CGI to help with the more technically demanding shots, but it's only used sparingly. And there is some use of 2D animation as well, which I thought looked really nice. There was the occasional character movement that looked a little bit off, and there was this weird slow-mo effect used a few times, which came across as a bit jarring. But overall, fantastic animation. And considering that during production, due to the pandemic, the crew had to work remotely in order to animate parts of the film. Not to mention with there also being alleged studio fires, I'd say overall, the animation turned out pretty damn good. The film's musical score is also fitting, nice mixture of some punk music, as well as some choir vocals to fit in with the whole Catholic school setting.
My door is always open.
Alright, so that's the good stuff. Now with the negatives. So on a technical level, this film is brilliant. On a writing level, however, not so much. First up, the plots. There is just too much going on in order to fully flesh out each story. And I don't even think the film knows which of these plots is the main story. First up, we have Kat, which focuses around her trying to fit into a new Catholic school, but also her trying to deal with the guilt of blaming herself for her parents' death, plus that she now needs to deal with being a potential demon, plus that she seems to also have some superpower, plus the fact that she also needs to figure out what happened to her hometown. This is just one plot. The next main plot is focused around Wendell and Wild, two demon monsters that are serving prison time under the Demon King Bowser for criticizing his fairground. I mean, I don't know, I think it looks alright. Then again, I was also a sadistic fuck who would make his life a living hell for the people in Roller Coaster Tycoon. Yeah, fuck you, Derek. Complain about my extortionate prices now, will you? So because of this, Wendell and Wild want to escape the underworld to go build a fairground on the world of the living. So they use Kat as a vessel in order to get to the surface world, but then need to raise an army of the dead to help fund the construction of their fairground. This leads them getting involved with an evil organisation called Klax Corp, run by Cruella de Vil and definitely not Donald Trump, who are desperately trying to get a corrupt prison built in the town, but need to manipulate the council vote in order to get it approved. So they enlist the help of Wendell and Wild in order to resurrect dead council members who they know will vote in their favour. But Wendell and Wild already agreed to help Kat bring back her parents, but doing so could foil Klax Corp's plan, as they secretly burned down the brewery Kat's parents owned, and so they don't want them coming to life and spilling the beans. So now Wendell and Wild are put into a conflict of interest, so they now enslave Kat to keep her under control, and so now Kat has to fight off the demon magic she swore allegiance to. You see how this is all getting so convoluted? Not to mention the other side plots which are also going on at the same time, all of which concludes with an incredibly rushed final act, but I'll talk more about that in the spoiler section. Because of these many plots, that also means there are many characters. Again, too many characters to dedicate enough screen time for. There's this character Siobhan and her girl gang, for example, and with how much of a hefty introduction they get at the start, I thought they were going to be Kat's new group of friends/rivals and would be the main group we follow in the film. But after the film's halfway point, the girlfriends just kinda disappear and barely feature at all. One of the side plots we get introduced to is between Sister Helly and the school caretaker, who seem to have a long history between each other, but because the film has so much stuff to get through, we get these characters' backstory through forced exposition of dialogue. Helly and the caretaker are talking and they're just like, "Oh hey, remember when we first met and you were like 12 and you helped me capture all those demons? Oh yeah, I do remember that. I told you that I didn't like that. Now I hate you." But then 2/3 in, they just kind of drop their differences in an instant, and now they're back to being friends again, I guess. But even for the characters that do get more screen time, they don't fare much better. Kat, for example, our main character, for the most part of the film, is an unlikable arsehole. All she does is strop around the place and is hostile to anyone who shows her any kindness. Yeah, this is meant to be due to her having a rough childhood, but it's not until 3/4 of the way through the film that we get a bit more detail on how she became the way she is. But until then, you're kinda just watching it thinking, what is this bitch's problem? I feel like the information could have been better used nearer the beginning, so that we, the audience, can at least empathize a bit more with her shitty behavior. Wendell and Wild are actually pretty entertaining to watch. I quite like the dynamic between the two brothers, and you never really know whether Wendell and Wild are good guys or not. I'd put them more as chaotic neutrals, as their main goal is just to get their fairground funded, and they'll do anything to achieve that, even if that means doing something bad. Though the film doesn't always quite know where to put their moral compass, as at first they are quite happy to lie to Kat about bringing her dead parents back, but then start to feel bad about it later on. You could argue that that's character development, but then later in the film where they think Kat has been eaten, they show very little remorse for it. And the final main character is Raoul, who I think overall is a pretty bland character. He's pretty much there just to be Cat's sidekick, and only gets forced into that role because Cat conveniently needed a witness for the demon summoning. They try to add more depth to him by showing off his artistic talent, but this is shown for like one scene, and then isn't brought up again until right at the very end. I'd compare his character to that of Wyborn from Coraline. Doesn't really serve much to the plot, and is just kind of there. Now, because I know the people will be spamming out the comment section, I feel like I need to mention that Raoul is confirmed to be a trans character in the film.
It's none of your business, Ramona. I'm sorry, Raoul. I keep forgetting.
What am I supposed to do now? I have a son to feed. No, a son, remember?
The reason I didn't want to otherwise point this out is because Selick himself stated they didn't want Raoul just to be known as the trans character, but rather be his own character with his own personality. I think rather than pairing Cat and Raoul, they should have paired Siobhan and Cat. Siobhan is the complete opposite personality to Cat. She had a very rich upbringing, and though kind-natured, has an incredibly naive view of the world. Contrast this with Cat's poor upbringing and far more cynical nature, I think this could have made for some great chemistry between the two. The fact that Siobhan is also the daughter of Klaxcorp, the corporation trying to destroy Cat's town, would have created a much greater conflict of interest, forcing Siobhan between the two sides of Cat's well-being and her parents' grand plan. Another issue I felt with the film was the lack of mystery element. A lot of this film actually has a similar feel to Coraline. Our main character is put into an environment, one that she's not too keen on, and one where there's clearly some mystery surrounding it. The only issue is that we, the audience, know what that mystery is. See, with Coraline and even Get Out, we're seeing the weirdness along with our main character, so we're just as confused and intrigued as they are. But with Wendell and Wild, we know what's going on, because we're simultaneously following Wendell and Wild's story in the underworld. We know who these demons are and why they're trying to befriend Cat, so when she's all confused and trying to figure it out, we know the answers, and thus it makes it a bit of a boring watch for us. Now, the film does try to incorporate some other mystery elements, though these do get resolved pretty quickly. There's also a lot of plot convenience, such as how the demons are diverted away from Cat's summoning so they end up with Klaxcorp. Raoul just happens to instantly find Cat when they're meant to be in a secret hiding location. The whole blood binding thing to help Cat confront her demons comes out of nowhere, and to be honest, I don't even know why they went with it, as Sister Helly doesn't even do much to help Cat other than telling her that she's strong, which could have been done without the whole blood bonding. I guess it was to make it so Sister Helly would be too tired to then go and help Cat rescue her parents, but then she still shows up immediately to save the day anyway. So, I don't know. Right, so now I'm going to talk about the final 20 minutes. Naturally, heavy spoilers ahead, so if you don't want to hear them, click off the video now. The overabundance of plot and characters really shows in the last 20 minutes, as the film desperately struggles to wrap everything up. The town is literally about to be destroyed, but oh wait, Bowser's finally come up to get Wendell and Wild. Oh man, they're in for it now. But wait, remember that one scene where Raoul was painting a rooftop? Well, it turns out that he was actually painting lots of rooftops, and this artwork has now convinced Bowser to be more respectful to his sons. Which, oh yeah, because it turns out Bowser is also the father to Wendell and Wild. Oh, and all those demons the caretaker was holding? Yeah, it turns out they were also Bowser's children. And yeah, the fact that Bowser has more children was literally just brought up seconds before. Okay, so Bowser got all his kids back, and now wants Wendell and Wild to rebuild his fairground. Cool. So what now? Oh yeah, we've got to stop the whole Klaxcorp takeover, with just about 5 minutes of runtime remaining. So how do we do that? Oh, we raise one of the brew workers back from the dead, and get them to testify that it was Klaxcorp that burnt the brewery down. Well, that sure was easy. Happy ending, right? Not quite, because now it turns out the cream to bring people back from the dead wears off, so Cat's got about a minute to say goodbye to her parents. Oh, and Cat uses her superpower to see that the town rejuvenates itself, and is once again thriving. How and why did this happen? Doesn't matter, the movie's about to end. And hey, if Lion King can do it, then so can this. Yeah, the whole thing just feels like a bit of a mess. Though I appreciate the ambition and the film's attempt to have all these plots interconnected, it really could have benefited from just having one of them dropped. most notably the prison scheme. Have the focus be on Kat grieving her parents' loss, and in the process, she gets caught up with the demons Wendell and Wild. I don't want it to sound like that I'm completely dumping on this film, so I will quickly bring up some other good points. I liked how the case of our main character dealing with her inner demons is personified into actual demons, especially the whole concept of how she swears allegiance to the demons, aka making herself subservient to her own inner demons, and how this ends up controlling her life. I liked how Kat managed to defeat her inner demon through the fact that rather than just destroying it, she ends up embracing it and accepting it as part of her. Overall, I'd say Wendell and Wild is good, just not as good as I was hoping. If you're a fan of stop motion, there is plenty here to appreciate, and though the plot can feel a bit cluttered and jarring, it's by no means a bad story, and can still easily be enjoyed. Selick did also state that if Wendell and Wild did well, then he may potentially try giving the Shadow King another go. So for that reason alone, I say it's worth going to check it out. Who knows? Maybe this will be like a Mad God situation, where Phil Tippett spent 30 years to complete his passion project. Anyway, do let me know your thoughts on Wendell and Wild. I know a lot of people were huge fans of this, so it'll be interesting to see who agrees and disagrees in the comment section. But until the next one, guys, take care. Oh, and there's also this post-credits scene of an animator stumbling across a model of Kat coming to life. Seems a bit random, but then again, so's this video of me befriending a jaybird.